So, what is the capital of Australia? It's a question fit for trivia nights. If you haven't been to Australia, or maybe even if you have, it's easy to assume that Sydney is the answer. Think iconic harbour, biggest and most visited city. Even within Australia, the capital city's reputation is swamped with stereotypes such as a soulless and boring city with no nightlife, the bubble of all bubbles, a town of public servants in protected jobs, and my personal favorite, a city full of roundabouts and frigid temperatures. For a country famous for its coastal cities and warm climate, how did a relatively small inland settlement get chosen as its capital city? When the six independent colonies decided to form the new Commonwealth of Australia in 1901, one of the first things on their to-do list was the selection of a location of the new capital. Fierce debates ensued between representatives of the colonies. The obvious choices were the two biggest cities, Melbourne and Sydney, but a few other cities such as Adelaide, Hobart, and Ballarat were also suggested. Melbourne and Sydney both have prominent seaports, and arguments were made that seaports were not ideal as they are vulnerable to enemy attacks from overseas and that this exposure also made them at risk for diseases. These established cities also don't have the climate being sought by the pioneers of the Federation. The search is on for an inland capital with a bracing climate. More on that later. George Reid, the New South Wales Premier at the time, a shrewd politician, used the clout of New South Wales being the motherland colony to argue that the federal capital has to be located in his home state. This won support at a quote-unquote secret premiers conference in Melbourne. However, there is a catch. The capital has to be at least 100 miles from Sydney. In the meantime, Melbourne would act as the interim capital. Later that year, the Royal Commission on Sites for the Seat of Government of the Commonwealth was formed. It's a mouthful, but so is the list of sites inspected and considered. Over 60 localities in New South Wales were promoted. Sites along the railway line from Sydney to Melbourne have an advantage of being accessible to both cities. Sites around Albury in the far south of the state were deemed to be too close to Melbourne, while sites such as Armidale and Tamworth were considered too far from Sydney and obviously further away from Melbourne. Over the next 8 years, federal capital leagues sprouted like mushrooms, and local politicians from a number of towns across New South Wales vied for their localities to be considered. Some promoted their towns to have magical proofs of local health and longevity, or have incredible variety of produce coming out of the soil. In 1902, senators and members of the House of Representatives took a series of tours to several sites. Come voting time for the Federal Territory Bill, the House of Representatives selected Chumul, a charming cattle district, but there was suspicion that the selection was more due to politics than merit, given that the runner-up Lyndhurst was considered too close to Sydney. The bill came to the Senate, who then voted for Bombala, likely motivated by the desire to stall the selection of the site, and stalled it was, for a compromise was not made and the bill eventually lapsed. After another 4 bills and 3 parliaments, the decision kept getting deferred, but over time, one side became the forerunner. Dalgety had many things going for it: the presence of the Snowy River, a location halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, and its bracing climate. Let's zoom in on that last criteria of climate, in particular, bracing climate. Federal officials were looking for a place with cooler temperatures than the average Australian coastal city for 2 possible reasons. In the early 20th century, there was a popular scientific belief, environmental determinism, which suggests that cooler climates were thought to have helped produce the best races with the best brains. A less controversial reason is that cold mountain air was thought to be good for the health and therefore recuperative. Dalgety was on its way to be formally designated as a capital, but the New South Wales government thought it was too remote and instead rallied for sites closer to Sydney. Finally, in 1908, a site which ticks all the right boxes was selected. Water supply via the Cotta and Molonglo rivers, picturesque mountains as fortification, just over 100 miles from Sydney, and of course a bracing climate. The Canberra site will be the location of the new capital. Over the next 100 years, the site would slowly and steadily build itself up to fulfill its role as the capital of the new federation while launching 1,000 memes on the interwebs. 100 years back, it has also inspired hundreds of suggestions for its name. That list included Kookaburra, Wheatwool Gold, and Kangaroo. A couple of other imaginative names were Sidmul per Adbris Ho and Mel Adni per Bain. A name was picked by the cabinet and was kept secret until it was officially unveiled by Lady Denman on 12 March 1930, declaring, "I name the capital of Australia Canberra. The accent is on the can."